How doing, everybody? Jonathan here, and in this video I'm going to do a certification review on the NASM certification. I've gotten a lot of questions on this particular certification and I just earned it, so I don't do any certification reviews unless I currently hold that certification, and I do it as soon as possible from the time I took the exam so I can keep all the questions that stuck out in my head and give them to you guys. So I'm going to separate this video into three parts. First, I'm going to go into why you might want this certification. Then I'm going to go over the study process. Then I'm going to go over the testing process for those of you that are studying for the certification right now. Probably I'll allay some of your concerns. Now, first and foremost, when it comes to why you might want the certification, I hold three personal training certifications. I hold ACE, I hold NASM, I hold NSCA. All right, and I would say that of the three, this is probably the most popular certification. All right, I think that ACE is the oldest. I think NSCA is probably the most respected, but NASM is probably the most popular. As a friend of mine who works for NSCA tends to refer to NASM as the bankroll cert, as they spend a lot of money on marketing. It's the only certification that I can think of offhand that I've actually heard on the radio doing advertisements on why you should get certified with NASM. So I think it is the most popular. They've probably done the most deals with gyms, where gyms tend to look favorably upon trainers that have the NASM certification. The next thing that might steer you toward the NASM certification is the fact that it's the only one, I believe, that actually has a payment plan. So when you get a certification, you're going to spend at least $400 just to sit for the exam, and then you have to pay for the study materials on top of that, which can add up to very easily $500, $600, $700. Now, the one smart thing that NASM does is the bulk of the cost of getting certified lies in the tests. So where I normally tell you guys, just go on Amazon, get the previous version of the textbook, pay a couple pennies on the dollar so that you can save a little bit of money on the certification, you might be just as good getting the certification materials that's offered on the NASM website. Now, I will say that I personally did the aforementioned route where I went over to Amazon and I got the previous edition of the NASM study material. So I got the manual that's about one edition back. I got the workbook that's one edition back. And I got the DVD. One thing that you'll notice about the NASM manual, it's much thinner than another manual. Like I have my ACE right here, the ACE manual, this third edition, and the NASM manual, it's considerably thinner. And if you saw my CSCS book that I'm studying for right now, the CSCS is like this thick as compared to this. So this is a pretty easy read. I'll go into some of the testing things early. I do think it might be in your best interest to get the most current version of the NASM study material, mainly because there were things in the exam that I did not see in the book for the previous version. Now, if I had not taken the NSCA exam and the ACE exam, not too long ago, then it probably would have been difficult for me, but I've been in the industry for so long, and I just got done taking the NSCA about a year ago. So a lot of the information was still in the back of my head. But if you've never certified before, it may not come to you. So you might be best off getting the most recent information, with the exception of the DVD. If you can get the DVD from the previous version, I would definitely recommend it, as I have a client who's also studying for the NSCA, for the NASM certification. She has pretty much the entire bundle, and she does not have the DVD. And you might be somebody like me who learns with their ears as opposed to their eyes. And I like hearing things explained to me. So in her bundle, she didn't have access to that DVD. I'm actually going to lend it out to her. And I felt that it was a great tool in getting a lot of the OPT model down in my head and understanding, the way that NASM presents their information. So while I would say, and also I honestly didn't even open this workbook. I never touched it. I just skimmed through it when I was making this video to see if there was anything special about it. But I always say just read through the manual, take the practice exams, and then whatever CDs or DVDs, just listen to them continually, and you should have no problem doing very well on the exam. Now, in terms of the NASM certification itself and the information that it presents, does it make you a better personal trainer and such? I would say that the NASM certification is the posture certification. When it comes to ACE, NASM, and NSCA, I would consider ACE to be more of the general cover yourself certification that's the do no harm certification. I consider the NSCA certified personal training certification more of the not athlete but training certification. It goes a lot more into different types of training styles in more depth than the NASM. If the NASM had anything that it really stood up head and shoulder against the other two certifications, it would be that it is a great posture and balance certification, which I think is going to be great as a lot of people are working with lay people. You're not automatically working with athletes when you first get into your personal training. And I think the way that they present their information in terms of the OPT model, starting with stabilization, is very important. A bulk of the information that is going to be necessary for you to test well is going to be all around muscular imbalances and flexibility. And I think that's a huge aspect of fitness that tends to be overlooked. So I think NASM does a great job in presenting that kind of information. In terms of the OPT model, I think it's something that if you don't have a style and if you're looking to kind of plug in a style of training for your clients, the OPT model is actually pretty good for a beginner personal trainer, as it gives you definite reasons to be in the stabilization phase, then in the muscular endurance, the muscular hypertrophy, muscular strength, and then power phase. And it really maps out exactly how you should be training your client. The key is just remembering when it comes to the examinations, but you always have access to the information in your book. The other thing that I really like about the NASM certification itself is that it was a very easy read. Like I found myself reading through chapters in about 20-30 minutes. Now granted, a lot of the information I already knew, so it was a little bit easier for me, but compared to how I felt when I was reading the NSCA cert, like there were some chapters for NSCA that I had to break up into like 2 or 3 days to make sure that I got the information. The ACE certification I felt was very redundant. Now this is going 2 editions back to the 3rd edition. Perhaps they've made it a little bit better in the 5th edition for the ACE studying material. But for NASM, I felt that it was the best read to get the information that you needed to do well on the exam. Whereas specifically with the ACE, I felt that it was just like a lot of extra information that you would never use. NSCA, it was just very thorough. So if you ever need to go back and check something, the NSCA manual is a great manual to have. But in terms of what you need to train a client, I thought the NASM did it in the most direct and succinct way. I think the OPT model is really good, and the overhead squat assessment, the pushing and pulling assessment, just the information that you get on muscular imbalances will help you to look better with your clients when you're explaining to them why you have to do specific exercises. As clients sometimes just want to jump straight into lifting heavy weight, you have to help them understand if you do the assessments correctly. That's why fitness testing is so important. If you do the assessments correctly, then you should have no problem implementing the OPT model and helping your clients see success. At the end of the day, it really is about nutrition anyway. So as long as you're making sure that your client is staying on top of their nutrition, you can apply the OPT model and still have your clients see a fair amount of success. Now, most important to a lot of people that have already purchased the material is the exam itself. What is it like? Now, first thing that I would say when it comes to the NASM personal training exam, number one, buy their diagnostics exams, buy their practice exams. I bought all 3. So between the seat for the exam and the practice exams, it came up to $689, but it was really like $59 a month for a year. So they don't do any credit checks. They just essentially ask you what you want, and then you're just billed monthly, which I think is a little bit more of a relief than having to fork over $600, $700, $800 up front. So they do break it down. That makes it a little bit easier. My advice to you would be to read through the manual one time, then take the practice exams, see what you're struggling with, and then go over it again in the book. Then continue to watch the DVD and then get that information drilled into your head over and over. Whatever comes to you naturally, you don't study. Whatever you find yourself struggling with, make sure to go over for the exam. It should not be more than, I don't think, 3 months if you really dedicate yourself, given the way they present the material and the clarity in which they present the material. I don't think it'll be too difficult for you. A lot of people, however, when they're going through their studying program, get tripped up when it comes to the anatomy. You don't need to learn every bone in the body. You don't need to learn every muscle in the body. you don't need to understand, the muscle physiology and, the muscle breakdown and the tiniest part of the muscle. So I took all 3 practice exams. Each practice exam had 100 questions. So out of the 300 questions total, I only came across a question about, the makeup of the muscle 2 times. When it came to the actual personal training certification exam, I only saw 1 question about the muscle makeup. You might get 2 or 3 questions on the sliding filament theory, so you want to know exactly how it works. But in terms of every small little detail about the muscle, you're probably going to see 1 question. And out of the 150 questions of the exam, 15 of them are unscored, so you may not have that even count against you. So when it comes to the breakdown of the smallest parts of the muscle and the makeup of the muscle, while you should know it, you shouldn't go crazy about it. Or when it comes to the pathway of the heart, I'm going to include a link to a video that I found on YouTube that makes the pathway of the heart very easy to understand. It takes about 2 minutes to watch. I think that'll be much easier than any book's version. If you watch that, I don't think you have any problem with the pathway of the heart. Now, when it comes to anatomy, you don't need to know every single bone and muscle in the body. The best thing that's going to help you is understanding the root word of bones and muscles so you know where to find them. So for instance, bicep femoris is going to be your hamstrings. Biceps meaning 2, femoris, your femur bone is your leg. So that's exactly where you're going to find it. Where it was a biceps brachii, that's of your arm. Knowing the difference between posterior and anterior, front and back, back and front rather, superior and inferior, up and down. Those are going to be terms that if you understand them, the questions are laid out that you'll be able to eliminate 2 questions just right off the bat. So you don't need to understand, or you don't need to know every single muscle. You just need to know how to identify their location. I'll probably make a video on understanding anatomy for personal training certifications, as I found that if you know it for ACE, you're going to know it for NSCA. If you know it for NSCA, you're going to know it for NASM. So I'll be making that video within the next couple of weeks. In terms of the planes of motion, you want to know the sagittal is anything that moves this way, frontal is anything that moves this way, transverse is anything that moves around. That should be no problem for you. When it comes to identifying muscles, the main muscles that you're going to have to learn to identify are going to be the muscles that are under and overactive in your assessments, namely your overhead squat assessment, your pulling assessment, and your pushing assessment. And the best part is with the shoulder elevation, in the pulling and pushing assessment, the same muscles tend to be overactive. When it comes to a single leg squat and an overhead squat assessment, knees together or knees coming inward affect the same muscles. The same muscles are overactive and underactive for each. So when you understand that table, and that's really like a list of maybe 15 muscles, then you will be able to answer a lot of questions on the exam, because I saw a lot of questions that were dedicated toward the overhead squat assessment. If the arms fall forward, what muscles are overactive? Or if the knees are cave inward, what muscles are underactive? Another way that they would ask about an overactive muscle is if your shoulders shrug during a pulling assessment, what muscles would you stretch? That's another way of saying what muscles are overactive. So it's just understanding how they're going to ask certain questions, and then the answer will always jump out at you, or most of the time jump at you, if you understand the table. Another aspect of flexibility and posture is going to be upper cross and lower cross syndrome, understanding what's tight and what's not. And essentially, whatever's tight needs to be stretched, whatever is underactive needs to be strengthened. The next thing that you're going to want to be able to identify is muscles for stages of the OPT model. And this is probably the easiest aspect of studying for this exam. So if you're asking about a strength question and you see single leg only really occurs in the stabilization aspect of the OPT model. So you can automatically X out anything that you see with single leg. Or if you saw throws in the, if you saw something about throwing, that usually only occurs in the power section of your OPT model. So it's about being able to identify which types of exercises would appear on what part of the OPT model, and then that will help you to eliminate questions. When it came to the certification exam itself, I'd say most of the time I was able to eliminate two questions right off the bat because they just didn't make any sense. So if you understand the model, and I hope I'm not confusing you, then you'll be able to just pick between one or two questions, and usually it'll jump right out at you based on the way that they're asking. When it comes to special populations, there are really only two special populations that I really saw: older clients and pregnant clients. They're going to go over a lot of special populations in the manual because they have to. But in terms of the examination, I just saw over older clients and pregnant clients. There will be some on hypertension. The main thing is hypertensive clients tend to take beta blockers, which will tend to decrease their blood pressure. So you want to keep them off the floor. You don't want them going up and down. But that's really the only thing that you're going to see in terms of medication. So when you see like calcium channel blockers, that's not something that you're going to associate with high blood pressure or hypertensive clients. So it's about understanding the fact that, high blood pressure means hypertensive. So if they might ask two of the exact same question just using different words. So those should be a very easy way of getting two answers correct. The next category of questions you're going to see is going to be on nutrition. And really, it's about understanding the importance of specific macronutrients, being able to identify macronutrients. Like there was one question that asked, which one of these is a lipid? And again, it's another one of these situations where you have to understand that a lipid is a fat. So it was like triglycerides, monosaccharides, and then two other terms that had nothing to do with nutrition. So if you know that these two terms have nothing to do with nutrition, you toss them out. And then you're really dealing with triglycerides and monosaccharides, and any saccharide is a sugar. So, triglycerides automatically jumps at you. If you read the information, you should have no problem getting this kind of question right. So far, I hope I haven't made you want to rip all your hair out. There are two more things that you'd want to know for the NASM certification exam. The first is going to be scope of practice. The main thing that you want to know is that you can only develop programs for your clients. Exercise programs, stretching programs, that's it. You don't diagnose disease. You don't put together nutrition programs for your client. You don't put together diets. You just give them information about macronutrients and you just write out training programs. As long as you know that, it's going to be very hard to answer that question wrong. Now, the last section is going to be on relating to the client. There are going to be some very easy questions that I don't want you to miss out on. Subjective information versus objective information. Subjective is about the client's experiences. Objective is something measurable. So anything that you do an assessment on, like body fat, that's going to be objective. Anything that you have to ask your client about, like lifestyle, that's going to be subjective. Now, stages of readiness. Pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. You're definitely going to want to know that table and what each piece means. Open-ended questions versus closed-ended questions. There's going to be a lot of psychology-related questions, and they're going to throw in terms that have nothing to do with psychology. So if it's a psychology-related question where you're talking with the client, you're going to see answers like active listening, open-ended, closed-ended. These are going to be terms that you're going to be looking for. But when you see things like remodeling, diffusion, that has nothing to do with relating to a client. That's about bone and muscle. So whenever you see talking to a client and then you see the words remodeling and diffusion, just throw them out and then you've made it automatically easier. Always go with the simplest answer. A yes or no question is going to be a closed-ended question. A question that asks a client about their experiences is going to be an open-ended question. So I really hope I haven't confused you. I hope I was able to help you narrow your studying efforts as a NASM personal training certification. I think it's going to be a good cert for you, especially if it's your first. It'll help you to relate to any client. It'll give you some structure as you develop your own style. And I think that you should have no problem passing the exam. I understand that you guys have a lot of apprehension and a lot of anxiety when it comes to taking exams, and that's just all because of the whole school system and how it probably messed you up as a kid or a teenager. But you have to understand, a passing score is a 70. That's a D. You can do this, all right? You just got to study the information. When you see a question that just seems way out there, understand that it might be one of the 15 that don't count against you anyway. So just do your best. Take the exam, read through the material. Don't let all the physiology stuff get to you. Understand your planes of motion, understand your underactive and overactive muscles, understand your OPT model, and you'll be okay. All right. I hope I made this simple for you. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, comment below. Add me or follow me on Facebook. I'll have new videos coming up every week. And as always, remember to eat healthy, hydrate, drive safe. Stress levels low, get rest. Don't slap anybody. Love your clients, they'll love you back. I will see you all tomorrow or the next day. And you have a good one and good luck.